And that is, we don't grow up with the blueprint of what entrepreneurship looks like, right? Um, and so, that's a steep learning curve when it comes to
Sure.
entrepreneurship. When you don't grow up, and I'm not saying, when I say grow up, I'm not talking about specifically grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, but in any environment where you see entrepreneurs, whether it's your family, your friends, the school you go, whatever it is, right? So I'm a big proponent of exposure. Exposure opens us up to so much. So for me, one of my biggest obstacles was the lack of exposure to what entrepreneurship actually is, right? And I do believe that if I would have had early exposure and my learning curve was a lot flatter, no learning curve is flat, right? But if it was a little flatter,
Right.
probably out of the four businesses that failed, I would say I probably had some relative success with at least one of them, right? So those four businesses for me was more of the exposure obstacle that I had to overcome. It kept reiterating, iterating and reinventing how I did stuff. So that was one.
Hey everybody, I'm back with another episode of So What Success Stories. And today I am so excited to be talking to my friend LeShane Greenhill. LeShane is a founder of Sales Cocktail and the president and founder of Eminence Holdings LLC. I had to look down at my cheat sheet. And that is just broad topics for or titles for him, because he has done some amazing things that he's going to share with us. But I have to go back because LeShane is another one of my friends from the University of Memphis. And so we go all the way back to 98, probably 1998, I think.
That's right. That's about
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
We go all the way back to 1998, and so yeah, we know each other, and it has been
Yeah.
cool. It has been really cool to watch LeShane do some amazing things with business. And so LeShane, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, let me say it's great to reconnect with you. I am proud of what I see in a friend that I have known. When you said 1997 or 8, it really took me back. Like, it's been a while. We have known each other over 20 some years. So
But I don't
it's
know how that's possible because we both just 20 something, right?
That's right. It's almost impossible. But it has been a pleasure to see everything that you have accomplished over the years. And once again, thanks for having me. I'm on your channel. So, you asked, who am I? Oh man, so I'm a native Nashvillian. Grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. Um, Went to the University of Memphis, as you just talked about, which is where we met, 1996. Majored in management information systems, got a finance in, got a minor in finance. And it was probably around 1999, my senior year in in college, I started my first business. Well, my second business, but my first business after high school. My first business was actually a lawn mowing company that I started in my 8th grade year in high school. A lot of people don't know this. So,
I didn't know this. I think it's cool.
yeah. So, this is how I got into entrepreneurship. I came home one day, and at the time, I think the big gaming system was Nintendo. And a new game had come out, and I come home one day and I wanted the game. And I asked my dad for an advance on my allowance. And of course, being the dad that I have, he had, his type of response. And so the next day, the response right then in the moment was no. And the next day I come home and he had a new lawnmower sitting in the backyard. And he said, from this day forward, if you want to buy stuff early, you need to go and make your own money so you don't get no more allowance. So there's your lawnmower. Go start cutting yards. And so for me, that was my first, foot into entrepreneurship, because at that point I had to learn how to sell, had to learn how to negotiate, all of that. So I started walking the neighborhood on a daily basis with my lawnmower looking for yards to cut. and I would knock on the door and ask to cut their yard. So that's my first business. But then in 1999, as I mentioned, my degree was in management information systems. So I started a technology business called Wiz Kids in 1999. That I had it was at the very beginning of the internet. It was an internet company actually. And it was called WizKids.com. It didn't go anywhere. Long story short, taking you from 99 up until today, I've started 7 businesses, mostly in technology. My first 4 companies didn't go anywhere. My last 3 were fairly successful for me, not, depending on what you measure it by. For me, they were fairly successful. And then about 15 months ago, really about 2 years ago, I decided I didn't want to start another company from scratch. And so me and my co-founder of my last software company, which we had for 8 years, we decided to exit that company. I took some time off, tried to figure out what I want the next chapter of my life to be. And I decided that I want to start buying companies instead of starting companies. And so that's where Eminence Holdings, which you mentioned earlier, comes in. So about this time last summer, me and my wife, we created a family office. And under that family office, we have 3, maybe 4 LLCs. So we have a property investment, real estate investment LLC. We have a franchise LLC where we just bought a franchise called Pros, a nail boutique. We have an investment LLC where we just invest in opportunities where people are looking to raise money. And then we have a 4th one, and I can't think of what the 4th one is, but we have a family holding company where now I just look to acquire, money generating operations that I don't have to build from scratch. So that's who I am.
And you mentioned the wife. So you mentioned the wife as part of the business, and you also have children, right?
Yes. So yeah, that's the most important part of my life. I'm so sorry. So yeah, married in September. I'll be married 16 years. And 16 years later, we have 2 kids. We have a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. I guess the other thing I would add, I said I'm from Nashville, but we now live in Kansas City. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago we moved to Kansas City. So it's new. So all of my businesses are in Nashville. While I'm talking to you, I'm in Nashville right now in the house that we own. We still own our house in Nashville, but we moved to Kansas City 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you saying all of that, I'm like, and now that I'm in this entrepreneurial space, and I was unlike you in that I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was in Fogelman, I got a business degree too, but I never aspired to be an entrepreneur. But here I am. And what I just received from what you just said is I should have been talking to you. I knew you, but I should have been talking to you about business and being an entrepreneur way back in 97, 98, whenever it was that we met. Because you have had some experience. And I love how you said you had those first businesses that were not successful.
Yeah.
And that's what I love talking about is that it's a beautiful thing that they weren't successful, because that's what I said. Some of my favorite people are the people who have failed a lot. Absolutely. Because that means you've tried a lot and you keep trying and then look at where you are today and the things that you're doing now. Because so many people could have quit back when they failed or those businesses. So let's get into the question. So in this program, I have what I call the So What Success system.
Okay.
And I believe that when people can learn how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices, they can have so what success. And that is success in spite of any challenges that they face. And you've proven that that's who you are, that you've lived by that formula. So LeShane, talk to us a little bit about some of the obstacles that you've had in your life and some of the obstacles you've had to overcome.
I'm going to start with this one. And I think this is one that a lot of people, specifically who look like you and I, face. And that is, we don't grow up with the blueprint of what entrepreneurship looks like, right? And so that's a steep learning curve when it comes to
Sure.
entrepreneurship. When you don't grow up, and I'm not saying, when I say grow up, I'm not talking about specifically grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, but in any environment where you see entrepreneurs, whether it's your family, your friends, the school you go, whatever it is, right? So I'm a big proponent of exposure. Exposure opens us up to so much. So for me, one of my biggest obstacles was the lack of exposure to what entrepreneurship actually is, right? And I do believe that if I would have had early exposure and my learning curve was a lot flatter, no learning curve is flat, right? But if it was a little flatter,
Right.
probably out of the four businesses that failed, I would say I probably had some relative success with at least one of them, right? So those four businesses for me was more of the exposure obstacle that I had to overcome and kept reiterating, iterating and reinventing how I did stuff. So that was one. The
Mhm.
other is, I mentioned earlier, most of my businesses until now have been in technology because that's my background. So one of the other obstacles I've had to overcome is the lack of being able to raise money for my businesses, right? And there's no shortage of research that shows that people who look like you and I have a harder time raising money for their businesses. And so I've had to overcome that. Every business that I've started has been bootstrapped, every single one, right? Even my last software business, we ended up raising like $45,000 within the first year. But the reality is, we grew that business based on revenue. So that's another obstacle that I've encountered. And then I would say a third obstacle is really getting the right mix of people, mentors, sponsors, and guidance counselors around you in the early days to make sure that you're going along the right path, right? So I can name many more obstacles, but those would be my top three.
Sure, sure. And as entrepreneur, I can definitely relate to all three, to all three, and then add other, like you said, other elements of your life, even your personal life,
Yep.
that can make all of that even more
Yep.
challenging. But you've proven, even with all those obstacles, you can still overcome those obstacles. Can you give a little bit of a example of how you've overcome some of those obstacles?
Reading,
Mm.
educating myself outside of the classroom, um, identifying individuals who have been there and done that, not being scared to ask them for advice. When I say not, let me clarify that. When I say not being scared to ask for advice, when, and this goes back to, actually, I need to add this to that list of obstacles we just talked about, is my ego.
Mm.
All right. A lot of people won't list their ego as an obstacle, but it is.
It, it
It is.
absolutely is.
Your ego is the obstacle that you have to overcome. And for most of us, it's the number one obstacle that we have to overcome. But we don't realize that. So tying that to finding people who can help you, people who, if you don't get rid of your ego, you would never ask for help, right? And so the biggest thing for me that has helped me get to where I am today is asking help. Nothing else. I can actually tell you, I know without a doubt, my first three businesses that failed, the main reason why they failed is because I tried to do it all myself. I didn't ask for help. I didn't seek help. I thought I knew it all. I tried to do it all myself. I didn't know how to delegate, or I didn't want to delegate. One of the two. In some cases, it was both. So I think the biggest thing people have to do is get rid of their ego. Once you get rid of your ego and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, the sky's the limit.
And I think I love that. And I think that's so powerful because And even how you said most of us don't even realize it's an obstacle, because that can keep us from asking for the help and the advice that we need. And then we spend and waste a lot of time and a lot of money.
Yes.
And because I'm guilty, because even starting, I was like, I got this, I can figure it out. Because you said read and educate yourself, which I think are still critical.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are people who've been there, done that, who know what to do and can help you do it. And maybe it's simply asking for help or investing, right, in getting that advice. So I think those are great.
Let me add something to that. When I speak at conferences, I always tell the audience, our time is our most valuable resource, and our network is our most valuable commodity. Every minute that you give me on this podcast, I can't get back and you can't get back. So make the most of your time when you're trying to conquer obstacles that are in front of you. And then number two, I tell young people today, it's funny, I just say young people.
You talking about me.
I'm you. But I tell individuals that I mentor today, don't be afraid at a young age to put your network to work for you. Do it. Don't wait as long as I did to put your network to work. It's the most valuable commodity that we have. And if you have it, use it.
I love it.
You're amazed at how many people are willing to help you if you just ask them to help you.
Yep. Ask them to help you and show them that you are going to use the help, or that you are trying to help yourself. And I say that all the time too when I talk to young people is don't be afraid to ask. You and I and so many others, I would love to help. If somebody reached out to me and asked me for advice or support, and I see that they're trying, happy to help, excited to help. So I think those are all great examples, and I hope everybody watching this can take down some notes, because it's real simple. Those things that you said were real simple, but they're really impactful if they're used properly. Yeah. So the next part of the So What Success system is learning how to eliminate excuses. So talk about some excuses that you maybe made over the years, or some of the excuses you could have made that would have kept you from getting to where you are today.
One was I don't have the money. That was one excuse, right? Most businesses that are started today are started by people who don't have the money to start that business. Right. So that was one excuse, is I don't have the money. You overcome not having money by persevering with your actions. Right. There are resources out there, may not be financial, but there are resources out there that allow you to reduce the fact that you don't have money to become a successful entrepreneur. So that's one. That's one excuse that people come up with. I'm guilty of it. The other is I don't have the time.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't have the time, it's that you don't have the focus. Right? To be an entrepreneur, you have to control your time and be disciplined with how you spend your time. I call it time budgeting. So you look at my calendar, I have every day outlined. It doesn't mean there's not a deviation every now and then, but I know every day what I need to be doing at a certain time of the day to accomplish what I need to get done that day. We have to set a time budget. You do have the time. You just don't have the discipline or the focus. That's really what it boils down to.
You know what I was going to say before you say your next point about time? I will never forget when I was a freshman at the University of Memphis, Dean Pettigrew said to, it was my emerging leaders class.
I know Dean. I remember him.
You remember Dean Pettigrew?
I do.
He said, if anybody ever says, or you ever say that you don't have time for something, then all you are saying is that it's not a priority.
Absolutely.
And so that stuck in my mind over all these years. When I think, or I want to say I don't have time, and I'm like, ooh, I'm just saying exercising is not important. Ooh, I'm just saying that praying is not important. If I say I don't have time, that's all I'm saying. So that's really helped me. Okay, go ahead. What you were saying.
And then the third excuse that I think we give ourselves is that we don't know how to get something. We don't know how to do it. And there's enough information out there for you to self-educate on how to get something done, right? And if you get to the point where whatever you're trying to get done is not your expertise, and don't get me wrong, you can't be an expert in everything, right? But if you get to the point where there's something that needs to get done and you don't know how to do it, where you feel like it's not the highest value of your time to get it done, to do it, you can delegate that and find someone else to get that done for you.
Absolutely.
Right.
And if you're a smart person or business person especially, then you should always try to find somebody else to get it done. And that's a lesson that's taken me a minute to learn myself as an entrepreneur, kind of back to what you were saying, and not delegating and trying to do everything myself.
Yep. And then
go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, you full of them. Go with another one.
I would say the only other thing is not truly understanding what your vision is, which is really just a lack of planning for you, right? So are you familiar with oh God, the framework that I use whenever I start a business? There's a framework that I use that makes I have to sit down and outline my core purpose, my core vision, my 10-year goals, my 3-year goals, my 1-year goals, all the way down to my 3-month goals. And I use that as a way to plan out what I want to get accomplished and what issues may arise that I need to overcome. So I think that's lack of planning is another excuse. And that goes back to actually being disciplined and being focused at the end of the day. But those would be the things that I would say when it comes to excuses that a lot of people come up with. I've come up with all of them. I've used them all in my lifetime. And I'll be very candid with you. There's some times, even now, when that thought creeps in my mind, right? And I have to kind of reel myself back in and be like, whoa, you're starting to drift a little bit into this realm of not being productive because you're giving yourself excuses on why you can't get something done. So it's not that I've 100% overcome them. I don't want any of your viewers to think that. I'm human. We all are human. And every now and then you're going to have thoughts and you're going to have doubts. It's just the way that the human mind operates.
But also knowing that you can overcome those obstacles, you can get rid of those excuses. And so because same thing here. I talk about this stuff all day, every day, and I'm human too. So I have doubts and concerns and I can make excuses, but then I have to reel myself back in, just like you just said, and remind yourself you can get through it. Well, the third part of the So What Success system is about choices and learning how to calculate choices. You have made some deliberate choices, and I just learned you made the choice to move to Kansas City. You made a lot of choices throughout your life, and I even noticed when you said you made the choice to start acquiring businesses that were already started. Talk about some of the calculated choices you made throughout your life.
Oh man, so let's the move to Kansas City was a choice. Let's start there and kind of back into it. And it wasn't 100% calculated, but it was a choice that was based on opportunity.
Okay.
So I tell people when you talk about calculated choices, a calculated choice can only be calculated if you do research and you understand the environment that surrounds you. And you make decisions based on the data and the information that you have. That's the only way a choice can be calculated, is you've got to make it based on information. So, I started in 2011, I think it was. Yeah. I co-founded my last software company. And I don't know, I think you talked when I talked about this when you were at the house 3 or 4 years ago. But that company was the purpose of that company was to help corporations automate how they track how much money they spend with women and minority businesses. That's what my software company did. And it also helped them identify women and minority businesses to spend more money with. Going into that field actually was a calculated choice based on what I saw then as an opportunity, because big businesses were looking for ways to increase the diversity spend. But the only way I got to making that choice is by doing a lot of research, by having a ton of conversations with people who were in corporate America, and at the end of the day, looking at what the dollars could be in that area, right? So I started, I can't take credit. Me and my co-founder, we co-founded that business. I always got to give Raj credit because I couldn't have done, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. I couldn't have done that business without my brilliant CTO and co-founder Raj, all right? So, but that was a calculated choice. We made a calculated choice to totally focus on minority businesses and nothing else. And we made that choice because we saw the way corporate America was driving dollars or wanted to drive dollars in that area. And it paid off for us. Another choice that I made, and coming back to this move to Kansas City, about 4 or 5 years ago, my wife and I had a conversation, and one of the comments we made was we wish we could find a city that was where Nashville was about 10 or 12 years ago. Because Nashville, a lot of people know, is not the Nashville I grew up in. And the reason why we made that comment is because we're looking for investment opportunity.
Sure.
Right? Before it gets to where Nashville is. Outside of my wife's job, which is headquartered in Kansas City, we felt like this was another opportunity for us to get in a investment opportunity that mimicked what we think could be like Nashville 10 years from now. Sure. That was the calculated choice for us, right?
Absolutely.
So not every choice that I've made has been calculated, and every calculated choice that I've made hasn't always worked out. So let me make sure that people know that, right? Just because you do the research, you have the data, you make an informed decision, it don't mean it's going to work. But whenever you get ready to make those choices, make sure you have enough information in front of you where you feel comfortable at the end of the night that you make the right choice. And if that choice doesn't work out, just know that you made it with the available data at the time that allowed you to make an informed decision.
Absolutely. And then you employ what we've already talked about, learning how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and move through whatever that choice was or the outcomes of that choice, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's great advice. So when you learn how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices, you can achieve what success. And again, that's success in spite of any challenges that you face. LeShane, though, what is your own personal definition of success? How do you define success?
Simple, learning from your failures.
I like that.
Simple. If you learn from your failures, you reduce the possibility of having the same failure twice, right? And so, I used to look at failure as failure. I used to like, but failure is not failure if you learn from it. I'm not saying anything other people have said, but my personal definition of success is when I don't achieve what I want to achieve or what I set out to achieve. If I can look back and have some learning lessons on that, that was a success for me, because I'm going to take those lessons and do my best not to repeat them in the future.
I love it. I love it. So following the same lines, because that was advice, but what is one other piece of advice you would give to someone who's watching this, who wants to be successful in whatever aspects of their life and however they define success? But what advice would you give?
That's simple too. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. you have to get out of your comfort zone to realize the success that you want to achieve. Success is not realized in your comfort zone.
Yep.
It's a different gratification when you step outside that comfort zone and you achieve that goal that you set out to achieve.
I love it. I love it. Great advice, LeShane. I wish you the best in your new home and in all your new opportunities. And I look forward to continue to watch you and your businesses and all your success continue to grow. So good catching up with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy.